So, one of the questions that Clownfish TV brought up, they kind of theorize this, and they feel and believe they're kind of right on the money. But, I mentioned this, in my on-camera, thoughts and review on it. But one thing that Clownfish TV brought up, Neon and Geeky brought up, was the possibility that basically there could have been a lot of rewrites and maybe reanimations or whatever the case may be when it comes to basically part 2 of Masters of the Universe Revelation. Now we know that with any series, when it comes to doing the second half of one season, the initial season, or the second half of a newer season, or maybe even the final season itself, we know that a lot of shows have been known to kind of switch things up. Even mid through their run in the prime, if you will, they've been known to switch things up. But the question obviously that's being asked and theorized, by the likes of Clownfish TV and others, is did that happen with Revelation? You see, one thing that they brought up is the fact that when you look at part 1, it's very heavily implied, if you will, that something was going on between Teela and Andrea. That there was some LGBTQ-ness, if you will, between the two. Like basically the friendship they had, the close friendship they had was more than that. Just by the looks, one would give the other and vice versa. But yet, when we get towards the end of part 2 of Revelation, it seems that that's all played out. Or that's basically a non-factor. That instead, it's kind of revealed or hinted at the end that Teela, now the new sorceress, is going to be with Adam as we expected her to be, basically back in the Filmation days, and thus tying into the fact that one of the descendants of Adam and Teela is the son Hero. Now, whether or not her holding Adam's hand and basically calling him her hero and indicating that they're going to be more than just friends now, it does make you wonder whether or not that was originally meant to be her and Andrea. Because Andrea didn't play as much of a role, at least till the end that is, in the second half. Because basically she was downplayed. And she ended up becoming the new Man-at-Arms. Now, some people did predict that that would be the direction she would go in. She would be the new Man-at-Arms, which is cool and everything. Although a lot of people also thought that she was being positioned to be the new champion. But that wasn't the case. Instead, she ended up being the new Man-at-Arms. And a lot of people joked around about the fact that once she becomes a new Man-at-Arms and the new champion, that her and Teela would be together. But again, that wasn't the case because she was downplayed, a lot more than she was in the first half. So you have to wonder whether or not that there was a change. Was, Andrea's moments, was her time in the second half edited down so that it wasn't so purposely obvious that something more was happening, or something originally planned was going to occur and had to be backtracked, if you will, because of the backlash it ended up getting. It is a good question to wonder, and it is a good question to ask and theorize about. But, like I said, this has been known to happen in a lot of shows, past and present. Whether or not it's in the first season, second season, whether it's during the middle of the run of the show, basically halfway through its, run, whether it's going to be going on for several more years or not, there's always going to be a change. Like there's always going to be some kind of switch up to where what seemed obvious at first gets downplayed, if not increased, more so, than it was originally. So it's not the first time a show like Revelation has done this because of maybe fans, encouragement and support of that one thing or the backlash towards it. So whether or not there were massive changes is totally up in the air. I mean, Evil-Lyn, getting the power from Skeletor the way she did, despite how a lot of people feel the way it was portrayed, a lot of people feel that may have been something that was written, last minute. Like, yes, it was talked about that part of the second half was going to focus on Evil-Lyn. But there was nothing indicating that she was going to end up with the power. And she was going to be the first female He-Man-like character. There was no indication. None whatsoever. It's just that some of the promotional synopsis for it was saying, she's going to be, her story basically is going to be a major part or semi-major part of the second half. There was no indication she was going to be more than that. So you have to wonder if her getting the power was a substitute or a last-minute switch-up for Andrea originally getting the power or Teela originally getting the power. You have to wonder. Now, a lot of these things, and I think even Neon and Geeky have admitted it to an extent, that, a lot of these theories, they could be wrong. They could be absolutely wrong. And maybe these were things that were originally planned out from the beginning. But when you take a look at the fact that, historically, everything Kevin Smith said about the first half, or at least as far as the first half is concerned, when it came to Masters Universe Revelation, turned out to be not exactly what he promised. And it ended up being something that not a lot of people, and this is the truth, not a lot of people liked. It's hard to take at face value whether or not the things you see in the second half of Revelation were changed up because of the backlash. Because again, there was so much evidence, here and there that, something else was going to happen, something else was going to happen, or this romance, this ship, this LGBTQ-ness was going to, be a thing. There was too much evidence, there was too much hints, there was too much scenery, moments, if you will, to indicate otherwise. But yet, you have all these different things, detract from it, in the second half. You have, like I said, Andrea not being much of a focal point till the end, as she was in the first half. You don't have, Teela as unlikable or, God forgive me for saying this, bitchy as she was in the first half. You have Evil-Lyn being the one that gains the power, is the female that gains the power, instead of what people projected to be Andrea or Teela. You have at the end Andrea being the new man-at-arms, which again some did project, but they projected in a way that she would be side by side with Teela, thus confirming the LGBTQ relationship. But yet it's just her now as the new man-at-arms, with a new haircut and everything. And instead of her and Teela, standing side by side, hand in hand, it's Teela and Adam. And a lot of this basically flies in the face of what was originally hinted at and implied in the first half. So you have to wonder. Whether or not there were some changes. You have to wonder that. Now, I know some people will say, well, there couldn't have been that many changes script-wise or animation-wise. It's too close in between. Yeah, that's kind of true. But with today's technology, one could think otherwise. One could, look at it otherwise, with today's technology. And you also got to look at the time frame too. The first half came out in late spring, right? Mid to late spring of this year. Well, the other one came out in time for Thanksgiving. So you're looking at I would say, what was it, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. You're looking at almost an 8-month gap. I mean, like I said, March, April, that's 2. June, July, that's 4. August, September, that's 6. October, November, that's 8. 8, 7, if you will, or 7, 8. There's plenty of time, especially with today's technology, to be able to change things up, and make things different than what they originally are. There are times to basically change up the script, the way they are, or the way they originally penned, I should say, or typed up, and go in a different direction. Technology is out there today to where what used to take a while or would be unavoidable from letting be shown in the past can now be corrected within the span of just a few months, maybe a few weeks. The point that I'm getting at is these edits could have been done. I'm not denying that. Especially like I said with today's technology. But were they done? Were these edits that were made because of the backlash, or were these the original plans for the second half? One can never tell. One can never tell. I mean, a good example of something being changed up and edited out was the whole situation with the apple cider deal with MLP-FIM. You see, for some odd reason, during the reruns of that episode, when we first get introduced to it, the apple cider is changed up from a script-wise to apple juice. And in the subtitles of the Netflix showing of that episode, it's the same way. So, so obviously, something that was animated, even in Flash animation, and scripted long before the episode debuted, technology today shows that even something like that can be changed up, just like that, to avoid any controversy. Even Derpy, when she first got introduced, had her name changed, in her initial debut episode and afterwards from Derpy to Muffins. And that's it. Yet a lot of fans still refer to her as Derpy or Derpy Muffins, whatever you want to call her. But yet it shows you that technology has come so far and advanced nowadays that it just takes a slight changing of the script and changing an additional recording to be inserted that makes changes very noticeable, and sometimes changes for potentially from a political standpoint for the better. But like I said, when you look at Revelation Part 2 and how a lot of what was hinted at differs from what was heavily implied and hinted at in the first half, again, with the technology that studios have today, animation and script-wise, I wouldn't put it past them of whether or not they did change things up, to avoid any more backlash. I mean, yeah, they still had some backlash because some of the changes did not go over, the way they thought they would. And, a lot of fans still call them out for a lot of the BS decisions they made, even with these changes. And a lot of them will call them out and say, you only made these changes because you knew if you would have kept things the way you originally planned, it would have made you look a lot worse and made people realize that, people like people like Kevin Smith and Tony Basella and all of them don't really have a clue of what made the original Filmation Masters of the Universe very special that you're trying to attempt to continue. So, people will call them out and say that. And, like I've said a lot in my videos, people have a right to their opinions and their criticisms. But, again, the question obviously is asked. Was there any edits done for the second half to avoid the same big time backlash they got with the first half in the second? That's the question. What do you guys think? Do you think there were some edits made, especially with the technology we have today? Or do you think maybe, just maybe, You know, a lot of this was originally planned from the get-go for the second half. Let me know in the comments, as well as in the live chat during the premiere. Like the video. Check out the Teespring store, especially with the holidays, here, and any Christmas gift ideas you want to come up with. Also, check me out at BW Rose's Discussions on all your favorite audio podcast locations, except for Pandora. I'm almost up to my 300th podcast, guys, so get ready for that when it comes. Also, check me out at BW Roses on VENMO. Also, check me out at patreon.com/BW Roses to help support me there, as well as check me out on Venmo. We'd really appreciate your support there too, guys. So until next time, God bless, take care, I am out.